I think we're recording. Okay, I'm Sarah Bell, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about animating maps with Adobe After Effects. This is going to be a broad overview. It's not going to dive into one specific tutorial, but I do plan to put on those types of videos in the upcoming months. So if you have anything that you want to see a tutorial of in the video that I reference, please let me know. This is a presentation that I gave to the North American Cartographic Information Society, and I wanted to put out this video so those wonderful folks could have access to the presentation after the conference. So that's what this video is. It's also, I have been wanting to put out a video like this on my channel for a while, so it serves two purposes serendipitously. Discovering that it's easier to give a live presentation than it is to make a video. I don't know why. This is take 148, but here we go. Just like GIS, animation software is complex and it takes a while to learn. It's impossible to share every part of animation software in 15 minutes, so instead I will share 7 key tips that have helped me enter the world of animating maps with Adobe After Effects. I'm also going to be referencing an animated map that I have put in this video's description. So to check out that video, go ahead and check out this video's description. It's going to move fast and be slightly technical, but my intent in showing these steps is to demonstrate how approachable map animation in After Effects can be. After Effects is a digital effects and motion graphics tool used in animation and post-production for film, TV, and games. It supports keying, tracking, and compositing, and of course animation. You frequently see animations made in After Effects if you consume any of these forms of content. Adobe After Effects is also often used for mapping, especially short animated segments like migration routes, army movements, shrinking ice caps, or expanding habitat boundaries. These are classic post-production examples. Now, the term post-production might sound like simple touch-up work, but in this workflow, After Effects can play a big role in the map's overall design. The map you're watching now is one I created by building the flyover animation in ArcGIS Pro, and then I used After Effects to animate the bar chart and point symbols you see popping up. You can also check out the video with audio on my channel. When using After Effects to visualize this change over time, here's the workflow that I typically follow. I start in ArcGIS Pro to add data layers, set map layout extents, and perform analyses, and all of that wonderful GIS stuff. Then I export the layout as an AIX file, and I open that AIX file in Adobe Illustrator using the ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud extension. Illustrator is where I handle most of the graphic design and aesthetics, and I reorganize any layers if needed to suit my animation needs in After Effects. Once the Illustrator file is organized and aesthetic, I import it into After Effects. So let's walk through this. Tip 1 is that storyboarding your animation vision is very important to your animation success. Storyboarding also includes tip 2, understanding layers and keyframes in After Effects. In Adobe After Effects, layers can dynamically change, and keyframes are what you use to indicate when and how they change. So here's a quick look at how you can simulate movement and change over time in Adobe After Effects. Adobe After Effects layers work similarly to GIS and Illustrator layers, but I'll highlight some of the nuances as we go. I won't be able to cover them all. The timeline is where you set the duration of your project and points in time where animation occurs. Individual layers have properties that you can animate, things like position, scale, opacity, and many more properties. To animate a layer's property, you add keyframes at the point on the timeline when you want the property to change. Here's what that would look like if you wanted to animate the opacity property for this parks layer. Typically, when you add a layer to your timeline, the layer's default opacity is 100%. If you wanted to change the opacity of the parks on your map from 100% to 0% over the span of 2 seconds, and if you wanted this animation to begin at the 2-second mark, first you would add a keyframe to the 2-second point in the timeline and keep the opacity at 100%. Then you would move the current time indicator, shown as blue in this vertical line, to the 4-second mark and add a second keyframe. Then update the opacity for this keyframe to 0%. That procedure would mean that your parks would fade away from your map over the span of 2 seconds like this. 1001, 1002. But look, the labels are still there. That is because we only added the animation to the park's polygon layer. That leads to tip 3, copy and paste keyframes. To add that same fading opacity animation to the park's labels layer, add keyframes in the identical points on the label layer's timeline. Then select the keyframe with the properties you want to copy and press Ctrl-C or Command-C. Then select the keyframe that you'll paste the properties into and press Ctrl-V or Command-V to paste. You can do scripting in After Effects, and here is one of the maps I made where I did do some scripting. Scripting in Adobe After Effects involves using ExtendScript, a JavaScript-based language to extend the functionality of the software. I'm not going to dive into scripting in this video, but I'll share a great resource at the end for those of you who are curious. That said, you don't need to do scripting to make powerful animations in After Effects, and for this reason, the animated map that I reference in this video's description uses no scripting. Tip 4 is to set up your GIS map to align with your map animation objectives. This is my ArcGIS Pro project for the map animation, the one that I'm building out in this. Note that I have most layers turned off, and that's just for your visual harmony in this video and not for any other reason. Since my final map vision includes using small scale and large scale animation phases, I created 2 layouts in Pro that you see here, one for phase 1 and phase 2. Both layouts are 1920 by 1080 to match my After Effects composition size. I have added all the layers for both phases into this map, and when exporting each phase, I only turn on the layers I want for that phase. For example, at the zoomed out scale, it made no sense to show the actual marathon route that the map focuses on because it was so tiny, it was just a dot. So I turned off that layer prior to exporting. I also have this world navigation vector tile base map in both of my maps. And here's a peek at phase 2 with that same base map, as well as the marathon route turned on. Remember, many layers were exported with each of these phases. I just have them turned off for this video. I exported the phase 1 and phase 2 layouts as AIX files. The next step is to open the AIX file in Adobe Illustrator, so you will need ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud installed. I'll share a link for that at the end as well, and I'll also put it in the video description. This view is my phase 2 AIX file. When I first opened it in Adobe Illustrator, you can see that there are many other layers than just what was turned on in my GIS. You'll also notice that the layer structure matches the layer order that I set up in ArcGIS Pro, and this is all thanks to ArcGIS Maps for Adobe Creative Cloud. Tip 5 is to organize your Illustrator layers to fit your animation objectives. ArcGIS Maps for Adobe is great for consuming AIX files for so many reasons. Among them is the layer organization retention from your GIS to Illustrator. However, if you plan to animate sublayers individually, you may want to restructure some of those layers accordingly. My first example will use these mile markers along the Bellingham Bay Marathon route to demonstrate. If my vision is to have these mile markers animate as one single unit, for example, how their scale is changing as one unit here, then I can keep them all within one single mile markers layer when I import my Illustrator file into After Effects. However, if I wanted to animate the mile markers individually, the way to do this without any scripting is to create individual layers for each point. Now, it might sound like a lot of layers, right? 26 miles plus a start and finish, but there are really easy ways to manage this in After Effects, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the first step to do that is actually in Illustrator. If I wanted to create an individual layer for each path within the mile marker layer, I'd simply select that layer's artwork, like you see here, and then select Release to Layers Sequence from the layer menu options. Another important example of layer organization in Illustrator, if you plan to animate in After Effects, is to get rid of nesting like this for any layers that you intend to individually animate. If I was just going to have these layers that you see here sit within my animation as sort of the base map and either never animate them or when they animate, they do so as one, then this layer structure is perfect. It's exactly what I want. But if I wanted the capacity to animate my parks, cities, counties, and states independently of one another, then in Illustrator, I would simply drag those artwork layers outside of their parent layers, leaving those parent layers empty and thus deleting them. And that would leave me with this layer structure in Illustrator. So now we're in After Effects. This is typically how I import my Illustrator artwork into After Effects. I do it a couple different ways. This is one of them. After opening After Effects, I first click New Composition. And this gives you a window for your composition settings where you can set the name, the size, the frame rate, and the duration. After clicking OK, you can import your Illustrator files from the File menu, selecting Import and then File. And then I usually import as composition, and I keep the Create Composition box checked. Importing an Illustrator file simply places that file in the project pane. And actually, each layer, determined by how you organized in Illustrator, it can be found there, and each of those layers is sort of treated as its own individual Illustrator layer. Since I set up my ArcGIS Pro layout to be the same size as this After Effects composition, the layers will snap into perfect alignment. Here's a little peek at the layers for my Phase 1 after I dragged them onto the timeline. Now it seems like a lot of layers to work with, right? Well, to be honest, it's very manageable, and one of the reasons is because of After Effects' Precompose feature, which is tip number 6. Remember the idea of having a layer for each individual mile marker point, plus the start and finish sounded kind of daunting, but it was necessary because I wanted to animate each point individually. Well, here are those mile marker points from my Phase 2, including their labels. Once I had the animation exactly how I wanted for these points, I simply consolidated them into a precomposition by selecting the bottom layer, holding Shift, and then clicking the top layer to select all of them. And with all of those layers selected, I right-click to bring up a menu from which I choose Precompose, and this nests multiple layers into a single new composition, which then can appear as a single layer in the original timeline. Create shapes from vector layers is very useful for those of you who want to enhance your animation capabilities of your layers, or if you want to continue editing the appearance of your vectors in After Effects. And that is our final tip. Notice when I drag the marathon route onto the stage, it has a 1920 by 1080 bounding box, which is great for aligning the route perfectly within my map. But I wanted to do some visual effects on this route in After Effects that this default state didn't allow for. To gain access to those features, I right-click on the Marathon Routes layer in the timeline and select Create Shapes from Vector Layers. This converts a vector artwork file, like an Illustrator file, into an editable shape layer, allowing you to manipulate it with After Effects' built-in shape features. Please remember to mention any mapping tutorials in the comments that you'd like to see in the future. I'm going to encourage you to check out the resources in this video's description, as well as the animated Bellingham Bay Marathon map. And by the way, this map you're seeing now is Phase 1 after performing the graphic design in Illustrator. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.